5 places where the dead still move long after midnight. 5 warnings from people who learned the hard way that some locations never emptied out. Welcome to the Black Hour Stories. Tonight we explore 5 places scattered across America where the dead seem to walk the same paths they did in life. Some of these locations look harmless in the daylight, but the moment the sun drops, something starts moving. These are the stories told by people who swore they saw the impossible, heard footsteps where no one stood, and felt icy breath on their skin even though they were alone. Let's begin. 1. The crossing at Hawk Road. Hawk Road ran through miles of farmland and woods, a forgotten 2-lane that most people avoided once night fell. Locals said the old train crossing on that road hadn't been used since the 1960s, back when the last freight line died out. The tracks sat rusted and half swallowed by weeds, and the warning signs had turned the color of old bones. Most folks just sped over them without thinking. But one chilly October night, a delivery driver named Sam found himself lost on those back roads. He'd taken a wrong turn while trying to cut time on his route. His GPS spun helplessly, reloading again and again while his signal bars blinked out one by one. With nothing but dark fields around him, he pulled over near the crossing to get his bearings. The air outside felt still, too still. Even the crickets had gone quiet. Sam stepped out to stretch his legs and maybe catch a better signal. That was when he heard it, an odd metallic click from the direction of the tracks. Not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. The train line was dead, he reminded himself. Maybe it was a loose bolt settling. Maybe an animal brushed against the rail. But then came another sound, slow, dragging steps that scraped along the old steel. A chill prickled his neck. He turned toward the crossing, and a cold smell drifted over the road. It reminded him of wet iron and old mud, like something had just clawed its way out of the ground. The steps grew louder, steady and heavy, as though someone large was walking on the dead metal. Then he saw it. A tall shape stood on the tracks, its body stretched thin in the moonlight. It looked like a person wearing a long coat, but the coat didn't move with the breeze. It hung too still, too heavy. Sam tried to call out, but his voice caught in his throat. The figure didn't turn its head. Instead, it took a step toward him, and the rails trembled, actually trembled under its weight. Sam backed up until he hit his car door. The shape stopped, then raised one long arm and pointed past him. Not at Sam, past him. Sam glanced back at the empty road. Nothing there. When he turned again, the figure was closer than before, only a few feet away, though he never saw it move. Cold air burst across his face like someone had exhaled inches away. His vision blurred around the edges. He dove into his car, slammed the door, and threw it into gear. As he raced down the road, he looked into the mirror just once only to see sparks dancing along the rails, bright as fireflies, as if something huge was rushing forward. To this day, he won't drive that route, and he swears the crossing isn't abandoned at all. It's just waiting for another engine to arrive, even if the engine is long dead. 2. The gallery that locks itself. On the edge of a small coastal town stood a narrow brick building that used to be a piano shop. When the shop failed, a woman named Marcy bought it to open a tiny art gallery. The price was cheap, so cheap that people warned her it was too good to be true. Locals avoided the place. They said the building kept company at night. When Marcy asked what that meant, nobody would give a clear answer. They just said the old place had never felt empty, not even when it was. One evening, Marcy stayed late to clean up after a small exhibit. The ocean winds whipped outside, rattling the windows. Inside, the air felt strangely cold for a building with heaters running. Every few minutes, she heard soft tapping behind her. It sounded like fingertips brushing against the walls, sliding slowly, pausing, then continuing. She assumed it was the pipes or maybe branches scraping the brick. But then the gallery lights flicked in a slow wave first, the bulbs near the front door, then the hallway, then the back room. It looked almost deliberate, like someone was walking through the gallery and touching each switch one at a time. Marcy frowned and walked toward the back to check the breaker. The door to the final room was half open. A faint glow pulsed inside, like light shining through fogged glass. She pushed the door the rest of the way open and froze. Across the room hung a large rectangular mirror she'd gotten from an estate sale. Only now, a man stood inside the reflection, even though the room behind her was empty. He wasn't reflected from her angle. He was behind the mirror, as if the glass opened into another room she couldn't see. He wore an old-fashioned suit, the kind you'd see in black and white photographs. His face was pale and stretched thin, and his eyes didn't blink. Marcy stepped closer, unable to stop herself. The man raised his hand. He pressed his palm to the inside of the mirror. The glass fogged beneath his touch, like breath hitting a window on a cold morning. Marcy stumbled back. All at once, the front doors slammed. The deadbolt clicked on its own. The lights died completely. In the darkness, footsteps filled the gallery multiple sets, moving from every direction. Some were slow and heavy. Others were soft, almost childlike. All of them were headed straight toward her. Marcy scrambled toward the back exit, but it refused to open. Something tugged the handle from the other side, gently at first, then harder. She turned back toward the mirror. It glowed faintly again, but this time, more figures had appeared behind the glass. Their shapes overlapped, crowding behind the thin surface. Their faces were long, gray, and expressionless. Shadows stretched out of the mirror and crawled across the floor. Then silence. The lights snapped on. Every figure vanished. The room felt warm again. Marcy didn't wait to gather anything. She fled through the front door, which had somehow unlocked itself. When she returned the next morning with two friends, they found the mirror cracked from the inside, splintered outward as if something had pressed too hard trying to get through. 3. The lodge at Deepwater Ridge overlooked a lake so dark it swallowed reflections. Locals said the lake never showed the stars because something below the surface blocked the light. One winter weekend, a group of friends rented the small lodge near the ridge. The cabin looked old but cozy, tucked between tall pines and coated by a thin layer of snow. The sun had nearly set by the time they arrived. Inside, the place smelled of old wood and cold dust. While unpacking, one of the friends Drew opened a kitchen drawer and found a stack of black and white photographs. Every picture showed the same porch he was standing on. In the photos, the cabin looked newer, the trees thinner. But there was always a figure standing at the far end of the porch. A tall, blurry shape with its face hidden in shadow. Drew showed the others. They joked about it being a prank left by the owners. Still, something about the figure made their stomachs twist. As night settled in, the wind picked up. The woods groaned as if something large were shifting through them. Around 10, a thunderous thump hit the side of the cabin. Everyone froze. Another thump followed, closer to the windows. Then the porch boards creaked under heavy steps, slow, long strides, pacing back and forth. Snow sifted through the cracks of the doorframe, drifting into the cabin. The temperature dropped so fast their breath fogged in the air. One friend looked outside and gasped. Huge footprints stamped into the fresh snow. Not human-sized, much larger. Each step pressed deep enough to crack the frozen ground beneath. The prints led from the forest to the porch, then stopped. But nothing stood outside. Or at least, nothing they could see. They locked the doors and pushed furniture against them. Around midnight, the knocking began, not at the door, but along the walls. It moved around the cabin in a slow circle, tapping methodically as if counting its way from room to room. Near dawn, Drew woke with a jolt. Something heavy lay on his chest. It wasn't a hand, it was a photograph. A new one. It showed his own bed, taken from inside the room. In the corner stood the tall figure from the older photos. Only now it was closer, as if leaning toward him. Its face still blurred, but he could see its mouth stretched into a long, impossible smile. They left immediately. Later that week, a park ranger checked the lodge. He found the porch boards split and bowed outward, as though something with enormous weight had dropped from the roof during the night and landed hard. 4. The mine that breathes. The Copper Hollow mine had been sealed more than 50 years earlier after a massive collapse trapped dozens of workers underground. Most bodies were never recovered. Locals said the mine should have been filled with silence. But everyone who lived near the mountain said the opposite. It wasn't silent. It breathed. A tourist named Lucas heard the stories while passing through town. Curious, he hiked up the ridge alone one bright afternoon. But as he neared the entrance, the sky darkened with thick clouds, and a sharp wind cut across the mountain face. The mine entrance sat behind rusted bars bolted into stone. A warning sign dangled from a chain. Danger, unstable, keep out. Lucas stepped closer. Warm air drifted through the bars, brushing his face with the strange heat of human breath. Every few seconds, the bars rattled, as if something inside exhaled a long, deep sigh. Lucas froze. Then he heard the whispers. Not one voice, but dozens, all overlapping, speaking in a language that felt less like words and more like breath shaped into sound. He raised his flashlight and pointed it into the mine. But the light struck something thicker than darkness, like the air itself was solid. The whispers grew louder. Something scraped along the tunnel floor, slow and dragging, like stone against bone. Lucas backed away, but the wind from the mine pulled at him, tugging his clothes, drawing him forward inch by inch. He dropped to his knees and fought against the pull. His flashlight clattered to the ground, flickering wildly. Then a shadow stretched between the bars, long, thin, arm-shaped. It reached farther and farther, its fingers brushing deep grooves into the dirt. Lucas scrambled back, tearing his hands on sharp rocks. The shadow retreated the moment sunlight broke through the clouds. Light rolled down the ridge like a wave, and the darkness inside the mine folded in on itself. Lucas ran. Later, he learned that the men trapped in the collapse were entombed deep inside, their bodies never found. Locals believed the mine didn't breathe because something was alive. It breathed because something was still trying to crawl out. 5. The highway rest stop. Route 77 stretched across long, empty miles, the kind of road where you could drive for hours without seeing another car. Off that route sat an old rest stop that most truckers refused to use. They said the place had been spoiled long ago. A new driver named Henry didn't know any of that. Exhausted after 10 hours on the road, he pulled in close to midnight. The parking lot sat in eerie silence, lit only by one flickering bulb above the restroom doors. When Henry stepped out, the air felt warm except for the ground beneath him, which was icy cold, as though the concrete carried winter inside it. Inside the restroom, the lights buzzed weakly. The room smelled damp, like rain-soaked asphalt. Henry splashed water on his face, then looked up. The mirror was fogged over, but the room wasn't humid. A message slowly smeared across the fog from the inside. "You're late." Henry stumbled back, knocking his shoulder on the wall. The fog cleared instantly, as if wiped by invisible fingers. He rushed outside, but before he reached his truck, something skittered across the roof of the building. Quick, sharp steps, like an animal's claws but heavier. He looked up. A figure leaned over the edge of the roof. its head dangling too far forward, neck stretched like soft clay. The figure dropped silently to the ground. Then it stood. It had no face. Just smooth, pale skin where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. It lifted one hand. The palm was dark and cracked, like old pavement. The air around Henry filled with a dusty, rotting smell, as if the road itself had died. He bolted to his truck. Before he could start the engine, the faceless figure appeared beside the driver's side window, even though he'd never seen it move. It pressed its hand to the glass. Thick black smears pulsed under its palm, moving like oil alive with breath. Henry slammed the gas. He didn't stop driving until sunrise. Hours later, when he finally dared to check the passenger seat, he found a crumbling chunk of cracked asphalt sitting there, wet with something dark. When he reported the incident to a local driver, the man only shook his head. 30 years ago, someone had vanished at that same rest stop. All they ever found was a smear of tar on the pavement that never washed away. Some say the missing man still waits for company. And when you stop there alone, he walks. Some places refuse to stay empty. Some footsteps echo long after the people who made them should have turned to dust. If you've ever crossed paths with something strange on the road, in the woods, or in a forgotten building, tell us where you're listening from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the Black Hour Stories.